Good afternoon all. In this video I'll be explaining my experiences of the new DBX 266 XS compressor and in my opinion why I should avoid investing in one. As I'm sure you're all aware, the 266 XS, the model I have here, is the new model and the replacement for the previous 266 XL version which had a black front. I had a 266 XL and unfortunately the thing failed, and because it was a few years old I thought, well, why not upgrade to the latest version? After all, DBX spout off about how they invented compressors and how it all started with them, so I thought the DBX 266 XS was the obvious choice to go to. It's got a nice front on it, the nice brushed aluminium finish is really nice, the dB meters are nice. The pots also feel quite nice as well. But that, I'm afraid, is where the good news stops. These things retail, I think, well, in the UK I've got this for around £120. I'm not sure what that works out in American money or European money, but it's around the £100–120 mark in the UK. So these things are not the cheapest bits of DJing equipment to buy. Neither are they the most expensive, but I would have expected something better off a brand such as DBX. Now, a little bit about my rig. I use this compressor to between the mixer and the power amplifiers in my rig. It just gives a little bit of compression should somebody be using a microphone, and it also means that if I allow another person to DJ on my rig, I can use this as a limiter. If I turn the ratio right the way up to infinite to 1, I can use this as quite a nice limiter, so if anybody decides they're going to crank the bass right up, this thing will just take it off. So in theory this thing should work quite well for what I want, and indeed I've used it at 5 gigs now. I've only owned the thing a few months. I've used it at no fewer than 5 gigs, and the game, when it works, it's perfectly great. It does exactly what I want. But unfortunately, I've had no end of trouble with this thing, and I don't know if I'm just the only one out there, but I feel bitterly disappointed in it. I first started noticing trouble when what was happening is on the power amplifiers. I've taken this out of the amplifier rack to just to bench test it, but there'll be three crown XLS amplifiers, which I actually reviewed in another video on YouTube if you care to look. And this would feed out of here into the loop between the amplifiers. And what was happening is one of the channels of the amplifiers was coming on a lot harder than the rest. You know, there was definitely one channel, and it was channel 2. It was definitely a stronger signal coming out of the amplifier, coming out of the compressor, sorry, going into the amplifiers than there was, say, channel 1. Which was strange because I had it stereo coupled here. So it was stereo coupled. Of course, that then means that the output gain on channel 1 affects channel 2. And I thought, well, maybe it's coming from the mixer, maybe it's coming before this, maybe the signal is being stronger in the mixer before this piece of gear. So of course I fiddle around and I swapped the inputs on the back here, the 2 input connectors. I swapped them round, and nope, sure enough, it's still coming over harder on channel 2. So despite me swapping the inputs here, I know the fault is either in here or further onwards in the amplifiers. So of course I swap the outputs, of course, to determine whether the channels on the amplifier stay the same. And of course, what happens is I swap the outputs and it changes over. Now channel 1 on the amplifiers is being driven harder. So I know that the fault is located in here. I have changed the outputs around and done a bit of testing with swapping leads around, and I know that the compressor here is outputting channel 2 a lot harder than it is channel 1. It's a much stronger signal, which is strange when they are stereo coupled. I know for the viewers out there, I'm using the crappy 1/4 inch to phono connectors. This is only because I'm bench testing it. In practice on my rig, I would use the full balanced XLR connection. So there's no question about the connections being dodgy. I've tried different leads, and leads that I know work. As I say, these 1/4 inch connections I'm only using to bench test it. In my amplifier rack, as I say, I use the full capacity of the XLRs. So that was a bit of a blow at first, to be honest. It was one of those niggling things that all I did eventually was just crank the channel 2 side of the amplifiers down, and I just lived with it, and that was the end of that for the first couple of gigs. However, at the last gig I did, I was sound checking, and one of the subwoofers was not happy at all. It was not happy. It was coughing and farting as if it was right on as if the voice cord was right on its way out. And again, it was on channel 2, which was the louder of the channels. And I thought to myself, oh, why is it doing this? And what was happening is, as I was sound checking, channel 2 wasn't affecting it at all. It was as if the bypass button for channel 2 was completely pushed in, which of course it doesn't make any difference because it's stereo coupled. It was effectively doing this. It was effectively, the controls for channel 1 were fine, and it was effectively bypassed, so the full input signal of the mixer was being dumped straight into the amplifiers despite the compressor being run like that. So needless to say, I was pretty hacked off with having to now facing the possibility of replacing a subwoofer driver, which I'm not impressed. So of course at the gig previous to that, what will have happened is the full uncompressed signal will have been dumped into the amplifiers, and of course the subwoofers being quite powerful on my rig, it's popped a driver. So I'm really not impressed. I do blame this piece of equipment for not doing its job. If this would have compressed the signal, I wouldn't have ended up with a blown subwoofer. So I'm really quite hacked off. Now the latest development with this thing is the unit would pack up altogether, and I mean pack up. I mean the whole sound would stop. The limit lights would come on here and there'd be nothing, which of course then, you know, with a room full of 600 people in as I'm DJing, it doesn't look too good when the music stops. So of course I completely lost my patience with this at that gig, and I simply bypassed the compressor on the back of the amplifier rack and continued on the gig without this. Very disappointing considering it's only, as I say, 4 or 5 months old, if that. So I've now tore this thing out and I've taken the cover off, and we're going to have a look inside as to exactly what's wrong with it. But I'm very, very disappointed. So if you bear with me, I'll take the cover off and we can have a look inside. Okay guys, so here we have the inside of the DBX 266 XS compressor. And on the surface it looks alright. It's quite a nice tidy install with plenty of space. But I'm afraid the construction of this unit is not all that clever. The principal reason why, I've had a fiddle around with this thing, of course. I've got it hooked up to the laptop just out of shot, and I've got it hooked up to a small bench testing PA rig inside the room. And we're going to play some music through it, and I shall show you exactly what the design feature, well, I shouldn't say feature, design fault is with this unit. So I'm going to play some music now through the compressor, and I shall show you exactly where the problem lies. As we can see now, the compressor is running quite nicely. We've just got it tickling the compressor. Running nicely, stereo coupled, everything's good. Turn the gain down, the gain goes down on both speakers. Turn the gain up, the gain goes up on both speakers. So again, one would think it's running alright. But here lies the fault, and I fiddled around with this a bit. And watch what happens if we slightly brush past this ribbon cable. Watch what happens. There's the fault. Completely dead. Completely dead. The music's still playing and there's nothing. Not a sausage. The threshold light has come on. We're above the threshold. There's no gain reduction, and as you can hear, there's no music through the PA. If I give this ribbon cable the slightest brush, and here's my other hand, there's no tricks with the camera here, watch what happens. If I give it a wiggle again, there it goes. No good whatsoever. There it is. What are you thinking, DBX? Look at this. There it is. There's definitely a loose connection on that somewhere. There it is again. As I say, no tricks with the camera. I'll move the camera out. There's no tricks with the camera, boys. There is the fault in a brand new DBX compressor. Here we go again. I'll just wiggle the cable. Can you hear it? Nothing at all. And when it's failed, there's nothing on here, nothing I can do to get the music back on. If we fiddle around with it again. There it is. Totally gone. Absolutely useless. Brand new compressor, and it's got a fault on it like this. is a shame because when it works fine, it works great. But I can't live with a compressor that works like this. There it is again, gone. Completely gone. Now if you bear with me with the camera, I'm going to zoom in and I'll show you exactly what the design fault is with this unit. Now I have to take my word for this, guys, because the camera, it's quite awkward to get a shot. This is the front panel here, you can just see the pots on the front. And this is the connector that interconnects the front panel with the jack board on the back. Now this is a ribbon cable, and you can hear the compressor ejecting literally as we poke this here. Look at the lights on the front. If I zoom round, you can see the LED array here. As I mess around with this, you can see there's definitely something not quite right. And what they've done, they've crapped out on the design, and they have used one of these, I'm not sure what the technical term is. If I can point to it with the probe of the meter, I'll just point to it with the probe of the test meter here. They've used a crappy crimp connector here. This is not a this is not what it looks like. This is not a plug, a multi-pin plug that plugs in. This is one of these crimp connectors where they have sharp pins on the backboard of this down here. They have sharp pins on the backboard, and this is a front that pushes on effectively and taps off each individual core of this. It's a very crude and crap arrangement. I mean, they'd be better off if they wanted this. If they wanted this ribbon cable fixed to this and not removable, they'd be better off just soldering these individually to the circuit board themselves rather than having this terrible, terrible arrangement here of this crappy crimp connector. Which is a shame, because if I zoom out slightly and I show you the back of the board, the actual jack board, as they have named this here, you can just see the technical name they've given this. They've given this the jack board and the name of the jack board. I'm assuming this here is actually a proper connector plug because they've glued it on, which is a bit crude, but it ensures it doesn't pop off. This looks like, to me, an actual connector plug. And I tell you what, if we bear with me, I'll unplug it. I'll just unplug the mains from the back. The mains is unplugged, and I'll see if we can pick the glue off, and we'll see if this is an actual connector plug or what this is. Because this isn't the problem end. I've had to fiddle around with it when the camera was off. And this end isn't the end that's giving the problem. It's the end that goes to the front panel. Yeah, you see, this is what I'd expect. This is a multi-pin. If the camera will focus in, I'll zoom out slightly. This is a multi-pin connector, which is a good quality unit. This is what I'd expect of something like DBX. It's a multi-pin connector, and it goes onto these pins we have along the back. These things, at the very least, is what they should be using for all the connections. Plug that back onto here. He says, why won't that go back on? Oh, wonderful. There we go, that's back on. Which is a shame, because they have not used that arrangement at the front. I'll show you the front again. This is where the problem lies in the compressor, because they have not used this arrangement at the front here. This is simply a crimp connection, and it is soldered. The actual back of the crimp connection is soldered to the board. This is not a removable connector at all. If I pull that connector plug off this end, we can bend it back and I shall show you. This is not a removable connector at all, and this is where the problem lies, in where this connects to here, which is completely stupid really, because this tiny little ribbon cable, out of the whole rig, this can render your entire sound system useless should this fail. This is a single point of failure, and it's a load of crap. So all in all, guys, it's been a very poor show by the likes of DBX. I really had my hopes up for something like this, and it's turned out to be a very bitter disappointment. I don't like to go on YouTube and bash brands, but I've had so much trouble with this. I can't even be bothered contacting DBX to complain about it. I mean, if somebody from DBX is watching this, I would love to hear your reply. But I would have expected better of a new unit by a company that ought to know better. I was considering buying the Drive Rack PA2 Plus, which is a loudspeaker monitoring management system, which would have been quite handy in my rig, but I'm seriously thinking twice about that now with having this experience with the brand new model. As I say, I wouldn't have actually had to buy this if my old DBX compressor had continued working, the XL, which was the older version. I only had to buy this because the XL broke, and now this one's broke within several months. So very, very, very disappointed. I think I'll be replacing it with the Alesis or something of that nature. What's the Alesis? The 3260 or something like that. I don't know. You care to look it up? But no, what a bitter disappointment. Thanks for watching.